Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to introduce you to two concepts. One is how to move the player, how to kind of change their position, not based on setting their position, but by like kind of throwing them. And then secondly, how to add particle effects. Let's get started. So, in the name of simplicity, I am creating a new node. And what the point of this is so that I just want to introduce you to some new code, some new ideas without having to edit our existing node. So the concepts that I show you in this new node, you can then still use in your own node, but just you have to put them in the right place, and that can be challenging. Okay, that can be challenging, and so I'll probably introduce a couple methods to simplify the node that you're working on, at least one. And so without further ado, here I have a node, and it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to, when you hit that node, it's going to throw the player backwards. And so it's set up with one callback. So everything else is just standard default stuff. And if you're wanting to follow along, you're going to need to create a texture for the new node, and that's done using GIMP and whatnot. Go back and look at the videos on GIMP. I don't want to cover that here. So we have on punch, and it's all set up. It's ready to go. And one thing that you should do is regularly check your code. And so what we could do here, we could do that, and I've done that already. So, but regularly, every change you make, check it. Okay, so so I'm wondering, how is there a way to throw the player backwards? And more than likely, it's not that specific. It's not that there's not like a throw function. It's more generic. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go straight away to the class references page and look for a few different things. And so let's say you're looking for you're wanting to achieve some effect. Try with those words. So we could try throw. Oops. Now make sure that, I guess when you're searching this, you click on the right thing. So Control F, throw, and there's nothing. Okay, so there's, now if you think about it, you can also read through all this, and that actually gives you a lot of ideas. But I can tell you right away that what we're looking for is the word velocity. And if you've taken physics, then you know that that's speed. Now, we'll see here that if we scan through Lua API, there's several different velocities, references to velocity. Some of them you cannot use, and it may or may not make that clear. For today, but those are valuable functions. Those are valuable methods. But for today, we are just going to focus on add velocity, and just how to use that. So we can, of course, the method is defined here, and then it says that it accepts some sort of vel, or as it defines it here, it's vel is a vector, or velocity is a vector, and in some sort of form like that. All right, so that's going to basically throw the person back in that direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some of this stuff. Helps so that you don't misspell it. But actually, before I do that, I can see here that the object reference that we want to edit, being the player, is referenced as a puncher. So we're going to go with that. Now you got to do a colon, and then we're going to say add. We're going to type add, and right away, if your extensions are working, it will pull up add velocity. And here it's set your cursor in the right place. for adding the velocity. And what we're going to do is just curly braces, x equals some number. And let's just stick with a simple jump motion. And so this could be like so it's a little bit easier to understand if that x, if we're not moving the person in the x direction or the z direction, but just the y direction, it makes sense that would just be a jump motion. So we're going to save that and then get back in the game. Be sure to restart your game. Also, make sure your init.lua is saved, and the new code should take effect. Okay, so I got on and I was trying it out, but I had my fly on, and so if you have fly on, it of course is not going to change your velocity. So you need to make sure that you are just like a regular player, no fly, no clip, and no fast, preferably, and then hit the block. And you can see here that it causes you to jump. Every time you hit the block, you jump. Now, let's say we don't want it just to jump, right? Or that's how we would describe that velocity change, is in the upward direction, which is like a jump. What if we wanted the player to go flying backwards? Well, we would do that through by manipulating these numbers here. And you can get really, really fancy, like with using the look direction. You could calculate a backwards velocity, which would be a little bit more applicable, so that whatever angle you come up at it, you hit it and it sends you backwards. And you can get all that information as far as like the look direction and things like that from the Lua API. And if we go look at the in this area, we can see that there's several different, there's another, let's look at a little further down, velocity. So here is at least something that might be useful, though these might not apply to players. You'd have to double check that, but you can see here that we can get rotation and get yaw and things like that. So this is one way to identify which way the person's looking, and then you could do some fun stuff from that. Okay, on to the next order of business. How do we do particle effects? Okay, so it turns out that particle effects are a method of Minetest. And so if you want to create particles on anything, whether a player or a node, you need to use this method. And this gives you a very, very limited description of this method. Now, we know that if we scroll to the bottom of our Lua API, there's the definitions table. And so definitions tables kind of explains how each different thing is defined. And so I think we could do a search through right to the right here and for particles, but I'm just going to click on particle definition over to the left, and it'll take us right to this function here, or this method. And so this fleshes out all of the various attributes or parameters that can be set when dealing with particles. And so I'm going to leave that up to y'all to kind of sift through here and see which ones you want. I can tell you that you're probably going to need the position and velocity and acceleration. You're for sure going to need these. And then also a texture. You're going to need your texture. Other than that, I think pretty much it is optional. But be sure to kind of poke around and see what this thing can do, because it's kind of cool. Oh, and expiration time, that's probably going to be important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly throw this into my code because I'm running out of time, and then briefly explain why and where I put it. Real quick, I have defined it very, very simply with just a few parameters to see if it would work. And I come into the game, and if I hit it, there are no particles. Or no particle, because this is a singular particle. And so I know then that if this is not properly defined, it simply skips it. So if you're seeing that there's nothing, chances are you haven't fully defined the particle. So now when I hit it, something comes out of it. And that was what you saw, arching. So here we have the application of it. First of all, we call the method, and then we define the table or the properties of the particle. And mine's fairly boring. It's just simply a single particle, because we only call this method one time. and has this texture and this velocity and acceleration. The acceleration is important. It'll help pull it down and arch the particle. And so you can set those all kinds of different values. Expiration time is how long the particle stays in existence for. So you can really, do a lot of stuff, fun stuff here. Lastly, or I should say, the first thing I should have said was the position. This is where the particle is going to start from, and I use the node position that's referenced in the onPunch callback. So then after that, I define the velocity, the acceleration, the expiration time, and then the texture. Those 5 things were enough to cause the particle to move. Now, a few things that I ran into when I was designing it was that you need to make sure that your acceleration of the particle out of the block exceeds, or your velocity of the particle leaving the block exceeds the acceleration. If the acceleration is too high, then you'll never see the particle. It will just stay inside the node because it's falling to the ground immediately. So bear that in mind, that your velocity should be higher than your acceleration. So quick overview. What we did here was inside of a callback, and this could be anywhere, but in my case, I wrote this inside of a callback. I defined 2 things. I was messing with 2 things. First of all, first thing I did was I changed the velocity of the player, and that was done so with the add velocity method to the object reference puncher, and the velocity is defined as a vector. Now, you can do a lot more with this. For instance, using math.random, you can randomize the effect of that explosion, if you will, so that it has varying effects. Then so that was how to move the player. And you can do a lot more, like I said, with that simple concept. Now, the second thing was we added one particle that was shot out of the node, and it is accomplished using the add particle method of the Minetest library, and we had to include 5 different things. Now, this is only for one particle. So if you want multiple particles, then you need to loop this code several times. And then, of course, you don't want the same, well, you could have a particle leaving the node and the same orientation and direction. If you left the velocity and acceleration as this, it would always leave in one direction. And no matter how many times you ran this code. However, if you, again, add math.random, it will change up the direction of those particles and give you more of like an explosion type effect. So, and that is accomplished. You could loop this code several times using various different methods, one of which is the for loop or the while loop. So those are 2 different loops that you could use to cause this code to run a few different times. So guys, I'm way out of time. Thanks for watching. That is a very, very simple introduction to how to move a player and how to create particle effects. Thanks for watching.